Good morning. Let me check my sound. Is it working? Yeah. Okay, good. Let's do this. Hang on. Let me check this. Uh, Tech dramas. So if this drops out, it's because my computer can barely handle. I can't do screen shares or anything like that. But I also haven't streamed in a while for that reason because I just am at the end of my tech fucking limit. But yeah, we can't afford to take on more credit at the moment because of all of the interest rates and everything is just crazy. So I got to soldier on with a new computer, without a new computer that is desperately needed. But that's what it is. That's why. Do you want to know who you can trust is people who don't fucking lie to their audience and pretend that hustle for computers and shit. The people who don't have money are the people you can trust. No, it's fine. So it's just one of those things where it's actually just a bad financial decision to buy a new computer. And I use MacBooks and I'm in the Apple ecosystem, so I can't exactly just go and you need a specific type of computer to stream, and you need a specific amount of performance and all those sorts of things to do it properly. It's just this thing's end of life. I'm going to try and extract a little more life out of it next week with an appointment. But it's just there comes a point where it's like it's dead, it's terminal, it's over. It's a 5-year-old Mac. It should be better, but I just I'm unlucky, but I don't have Apple Care and shit. So it's just one of those things that it may just die in the middle of a stream. It's been dying 2 or 3 times a day while I'm trying to get work done and over these things. So it's just that's just life, and it's called being a grown-up and making decisions like flapping your mouth on the internet. So you don't actually you don't bring in money, right? So it's just one of those things. So if this disappears, or anything happens or have technical shit, I might crack the shits and walk off. See how we go. It's testing my patience. Like, seriously, the 2 hours before this stream is spent fucking keeping my computer up rather than preparing. So it's actually just frustrating because it all knocks on everything. So it's like the computer's shit, so things break, so that the stream is shit, so that I'm not prepared for the stream and I'm in a bad mood when I start. So bear with me. I'll get there. I just, again, and also because interest is where it is at the moment, it's a really bad decision to take on new finance for a computer. So everyone's fucking us all. Everyone is fucking us everywhere. Rent is double what it should be. Everything. Utilities are double what it should be. It's all a lie. Don't work hard. Don't bother. Don't bother doing anything. That was my rant yesterday about International Women's Day. It's like they're just saying, it's like, yeah, now they're telling young girls that they should learn to code. It's like, I can code. Full of shit. No, don't learn to code. Fucking just speak your mind and figure out the rest, because there's just nothing at the end of it for you unless you are, unless you compromise your soul to a certain point. It's just not worth it. But anyway, but can you tell I've got a trust problem as well? But I thought that there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today, mostly because, and there's kind of a theme, and it does link to sort of the early rant in this stream, okay, which is that I think that just overall there's just a lack of trust, right? And I know everyone feels this. I know everyone, I think a large part of the reason why I'm quite comfortable writing what might look like sort of angry rhetoric, which is not, I can analyze. I know what's going on. A lot of it is hyperbolic, to sort of try and shake people out of whatever fucking dream they're in at the moment. Okay. This digital soma fucking universe that we live in. Okay. So, you have to sort of, write in a certain way to get people to fucking shake it, which is, second person sort of exaggerating how you feel, to try and make a broader point, which is, where the fuck are the left on some of these things where, I'm just watching, person after person lose trust and lose faith over one issue. Okay, whatever the issue is, it doesn't matter. They're losing trust in their government. They're losing trust in media. They're losing trust in people around them. They're losing trust in sort of, there's kind of like And this is not a, oh, the Western civilization, the fabric of society is collapsing. I'm not like that. The problem is that I don't want to sell nihilism, but was in such a predicament at the moment where just purely seeing things as they are, or at least attempting to, okay? Nobody claims, anybody who's, okay, rule number one, never trust anyone who's claiming truth. Trying and working to see things in a pragmatic way, see things as they are, put the pen down, Taya, see things as they are, see things sort of in a clear-headed way. Now, nobody is immune, okay? I'm not. I've been wrong over the years. I've fucked up over the years. I've miscalculated over the years. I've been a fucking asshole over the years. Literally, I've been an asshole in the last 48 hours, which I can talk about, where I've had to reflect and go, like that wasn't okay. But for the most part, I try to be oriented towards seeing things as they are, being pragmatic about it, dealing with things as they are in front of us at the time with the issue and the, all of the, just seeing things and sort of doing triage, I'm good at project management and sort of figuring stuff out and trying to prioritize and sort things. Like one of the things in tech that, is sort of, it's funny how a lot of people don't apply what they do sort of professionally into their personal life. So for me, they're one and the same. The way that I don't have a real separation because who I am is what I do, and what I do is who I am. And I don't know whether that's probably not that healthy, but let's just move on from that. But for the most part, I've sort of got that integrated sort of identity, right? I'm quite comfortable with who I am. I show up as I am. I don't pretend. I don't lie, mostly because I'm a bad liar. Not because I don't want to lie, mostly because I'm a bad liar. Like I've got the brain of a criminal mastermind and been born, unfortunately, with a conscience and an inability to lie. That's unfortunate for me. It's not that profitable, but but I've been thinking about this issue of trust, and not just public trust, but I've had, I think maybe a disproportionate share of sort of betrayal in my life. Okay, I do have I do have to work on trusting people. Okay, through my family who haven't shown up, like my own mum. Like I was born to a mother who didn't love me. Okay, and didn't do the things that mothers do. There's a lot. I don't trust anybody. That's a normal thing. Okay, for someone who grows up with parents who sort of didn't, you take that as a thing where it's like, I don't trust myself. I don't trust the people around me, all that stuff. And I've also, through my many, many years on this planet, okay, increasingly more years, I've just, the way that you grow up informs your relationships. Those relationships obviously just gradually erode trust. Your trust in institutions, erode that trust further. You start to sort of expand and see the world around you. And somehow through all of it, even though, I have all evidence to the contrary, if I'm honest with you, I do try to work very hard on trusting people. Because I went through this when I met Paul, right? There is a link to it, but I went through this with Paul, which was that I'd come off the back of, quite a, poisonous sort of relationship. My first marriage, there was a betrayal, okay? Not cheating or anything, but just, like the usual shit. I think anyone who's been divorced or gone through a sort of breakup where, that person that you sort of grew up with and thought you knew and, they just start to behave in such a poisonous manner towards you and with such contempt, you go, who are you? That's the kind of betrayal I'm talking about, not talking about, that other stuff. I'm saying that's just a life thing. But, I also went and then I sort of landed into a bunch of, dating, power dating, okay, and that sort of stuff, as you do when you sort of, in your 30s and you marry young and all that sort of stuff. And I sort of got a sense of what, I had a view of what the world was like through dating. And then I landed in this horrible thing that further broke me. But then I met Paul. And and I had to work on this stuff. I had to sit there and make a decision to trust someone who, not the strongest communicator, but is a good person. And, I've had to learn over the years, TLDR, to sort of give the benefit of the doubt and give everyone sort of a clean slate, okay? Not to try and not, transfer or to not trust that sort of heuristic or those biases that are sort of, they come from a place of constant disappointment and trauma and that sort of stuff. And I think that can be somewhat transplanted into how we feel about politics, particularly institutions, media, academia. And, obviously, I went through this, I've gone through this a few times. Okay. I went through this with tech. I went through this where, I kind of trusted that certain promises were going to be, delivered on, the guys, again, it could be, unfortunately, I have this also, on top, I see it as a strength, but it's also, there is a naivety, which is that, I do believe that I still, for some fucking reason, I don't know why, but I do believe that if you invest in people and you show up and you are kind to them, that more often than not, it will come back. Okay, I've always lived that. And it's not a self-interested thing as in, putting coins in and you get something out. That's a transactional way to look at things. I'm a relational sort of person. And they may not even come back immediately. It may not be something, well, first of all, I feel better about how I'm treating people. Okay. And going from this place of, doing what you believe is right, not what's technically correct in order to get where you want to go. That's more transactional, right? And I think that through the world of business, I've sort of learned that, not many people are are relational thinkers. A lot of people are transactional. Okay. And that's where, obviously trust can become a problem. When people fuck you over or, people that, lie, there is a naive 7-year-old inside here somewhere that just sort of still believes in fairy tales, to an extent, and still believes in magic and still believes that, that people are good. And, it might be naive, it might be stupid, but it sort of helps me to navigate through the world, which is, I see the alternative, okay? And this is someone who doesn't trust, someone who is suspicious, someone who is cynical, someone who is, nihilistic, someone who is, and what I try to do with a lot of, when I sort of write these sort of rants and stuff is to try and see if I can explore the emotions and, conflicts between idealism and nihilism and anger and legitimate anger, legitimate loss of trust, okay? And that's the thing with like media, with all those institutions, especially what we've seen in the last few years. And like this idea that somehow, and it's, it's sort of linked to, the Nordic pipeline, which is it's like, oh yeah, the CIA says that they didn't do that. Well, what about all the times you said you didn't do that before, and then it turns out 60 years from now that you did that? How do you expect people to trust that? Okay. How do you expect when, say like The Guardian, for example, or New York Times, like we're talking about, that whole J.K. Rowling stuff, it's coming out to light. How do you repair trust when you have broken it so many times? It's like, well, this comes down to, like I said, that like people may not immediately come around. They may not immediately fix it. You may not even get an apology for certain things. Okay. But I think that it's worth repair. I think that there's a period coming up as we see a lot of people that are sort of disappearing down the rabbit hole further. What I'm seeing with a lot of this, like Netflix shit and all that stuff that's coming out, which is that there's going to be, I'm seeing people just sort of rewrite themselves as like always trustworthy, always truthful. And I think, and this, I've been thinking a lot about this, which is people don't know who to trust. Okay. Every other day we're seeing that if you don't know you're lied to, okay, if you don't already know you're being lied to on a certain issue, it's coming more and more to light. Just the degree to which we are manipulated, nudged, lied to by our institutions. But we're also, I mean, the big lie for me is this idea of like the big lie is capitalism. That, you know, that the big lie of merit. You know, the lie that if you learn to code, the lie of, you know, International Women's Day, that if you're a young girl and you, you know, you work hard, that it's not going to be that you can do everything. You can't do everything. This have it all stuff, this idea that you are, you know, again, I like to be honest, which is, yes, things have moved. Yes, things have gotten better. But, you know, I'm very suspicious when they're pushing this idea that women should be going into cybersecurity without telling them what that involves. Because I bought that shit. I bought that shit hook, line, and sinker. You know, you're going to be fighting bad guys, or you're going to be, you know, you're going to be, you know, looking at sort of disinformation. Okay, that's the buzzword of the day. You know what I mean? You know, and once you get to a certain age, you see this repeat on itself, and you don't trust it. It's like, well, why are you telling young women that they should learn to code and have a cybersecurity career when I know full well that industry, whilst important, okay, it's very important, they're told that they're going to be looking at phishing and, you know, child exploitation and, you know, trafficking and all of those horrible, yucky things on the internet. But really, at the end of the day, what they're going to be doing is censoring dissent. And it's like, well, no, I want people to be told what they're going into. I want people to see clearly what they're going into and be able to make a decision on, you know, in a fair, you know, like, I just don't like lying. And I know it's quite simple. It's quite reductive, but it really does come down to the fact that lying is somehow people justify these lies because it makes them feel better. You know, the way that we lie to ourselves, the way that we lie to others, and we justify it. And I do try to be honest, and that comes back to transparency and, you know, all that sort of stuff. But this erosion of trust, like, and I often talk about like Elon Musk, okay, and everyone is just so fucking stupid and and they're just looking for their hit of dopamine. They're on the wheel, the ball of the water ball from the hamster, dopamine, cortisol, you know, all that sort of shit, okay. They're not really thinking clearly. People are all in sort of their muscle memory, their heuristics, you know, all of that sort of stuff. Their knee-jerk reactions to just sort of instantly mistrust everything. That's another one. You know, that previous trauma, or you name it, all of that stuff. But in reality, I try to see things as they are, which is why I've talked about, you know, Elon Musk and the less shit option, okay. Like, I tend to just not engage with anybody who's just ideological at this point. There's no point. There's literally no point because I can literally predict. I can see what media people are consuming based on the shit that comes out of their mouth. I am a human. I am a Bristol stool chart for fucking media. Little medical joke there. Okay, based on the consistency and fucking, you know, color of your shit, I can tell what you're reading and taking in. Okay. But, you know, like Elon Musk, it's complex, it's complicated, okay? I had to think about this because I actually was someone who sort of initially knee-jerked and cheered on Musk when he made fun of the guy with muscular dystrophy, okay? Okay. Oh, good, we've got bots. No, you can't. Fuck off, add to block list. Hi, Willie. Okay, so, train of thought was gone now. There we go. What was I saying? I'll move on. I won't talk about Elon Musk just yet because that's a thing. But I initially, you know, like I am inclined to trust him. But the problem when you trust someone is that they're not going to live up to perfection ever. Okay. There is a threshold for, you know, obviously winning trust and you know, earning that trust. But I think trust is a choice as well. And this is where I think having trust in the fact that many of these, and again, not the United States because America is not the center of the universe, I'm talking about generally, institutions, democratic institutions, the wealth of sort of hundreds of years of sort of learning as we go along, seeing things, trying to see things as they are and sort of increment and solve them. And, there's a process there that has been sort of honed over time. Yes, bias. Yes, in favor of certain people. Yes. But humans, it's hundreds. I don't know why anybody thinks that they know better than hundreds of years of, collected wisdom and, democracy is imperfect. People are imperfect. Processes are imperfect. You've got to keep changing it. You've got to keep participating in it to change it. I think anybody who is sort of naively thinking that they can tear it down and rebuild it from the bottom up and not fuck it up and not make mistakes, not have to learn from those mistakes and not get egg on your face. Obviously, first of all, it's never run a business or never actually done anything of, that's got the high stakes. And they haven't really, like for me with my online stuff, because I've sort of made myself a crash test dummy for all this stuff. You make mistakes, you miscalculate because, obviously some of these platforms are designed to make you impulsive, make you more impulsive than you would be if you were face to face. They are designed to dehumanize, so you forget that there's people behind the screen. You are somewhat removed from the context of your of the information that you're receiving. That stuff is designed that way. Okay, it is designed to hijack those heuristics and make you react in certain ways. Okay. So what I do try to do with my work is sort of disrupt some of that thinking as best I can, without it appearing like clickbait. It's a delicate balance. But one thing, when you see things as they are, or at least try to, you also give credit where credit's due. And you also operate sort of on, you're anchored in sort of more, let's just say more, I wouldn't say logic, because obviously, everyone, there's no such thing as really logic because everyone's reasoning, in certain ways, right? Even the craziest schizos, right? It makes sense. That's some of the research around like schizophrenia is that, and same thing with conspiracy theories. It's the same thing with sort of radicalization. It's all that sort of stuff. And it's the same thing with, this idea that there was some sort of delusion or, that people really participated in the Holocaust under the, like I said, the literal butt of a gun, or that these things were literally coerced. It's like, well, no, because what that does is it takes away people's agency. I've said this before. It takes away that that self-awareness of those sort of dark parts of ourselves. It passes the buck in terms of like collective responsibility for certain things, and that's where capitalism and that sort of right-wing libertarian brain rot exists in America, where there is some such thing as sort of collective responsibility, where people in groups behave in horrendous ways, and so and individuals left to their own devices, those people will lead groups to do horrible things because they're being led by horrible people, okay, with no scruples and those sorts of things. So there is a collective responsibility to sort of design systems that sort of put gates around certain behaviors, right? This is how I see the world. I don't see the world in terms of goodies and baddies and good and evil. It's not that simple, okay? There's what is. It's not what should be. And yes, and for me, I'm an idealist. I do tend to be, like my personality type is like an idealist type, right? But I've also learned that if you're an idealist, you will develop trust issues. You will go, okay, well, I do tend to expect a lot from people because I don't expect anything from others that I don't expect from myself first. Problem is I expect the impossible from myself as well. So I have impossibly high standards for myself as well as for others, okay? In terms of, ethics, work, caring about their work, putting effort into things, all that sort of stuff. I really deeply care about people. I care about what I do. And so when I see people sort of disengage, again, I know why that is. Or people who are only motivated by money and nothing else, or people who are only motivated by clout and nothing else. I go, I find it funny, actually, just to digress a little bit, I do find it funny, the sort of, the self-report of people who think that everyone who has, YouTube or Twitter or whatever is after the same things that they are, which is like money and clout. I mean, yes, would I like a new MacBook Pro? Yes, very much. Would I like to be making enough money to sustain this so I can actually fucking prepare for a stream and not waffle for 45 minutes, rather than be sort of tinkering with tech or having to juggle it around other things? Of course I would. I'm not, like I live in the world. I'm a fucking grown up. I need money to live. That's just gravity. Okay. That's just the more, if you have enough, I've always lived with a principle of enough, not more. Okay. I just want enough money. I think most people, I want enough. Now, obviously in a business with a lot of overheads, or you want to, that, and what is enough is subjective. Like, that's different. It is the pursuit of more, which is, I have a problem with, which is when you have stuff that is excess to your needs. And it becomes, this thing where you're accumulating, and it's just, I don't feel that is a path to happiness. And that's proven by, study after study after study that, there's a certain point where enough money does actually make you happy. And then there's a point after that where it actually makes you very unhappy. Okay. My money, my problems. But I'm just saying, right, that's just one example where, I can't remember what my point was. Oh, yeah. So this idea that, just because I actually feel sorry for people who are only really in pursuit of money. I find these people who are just only driven by money very sad individuals, because it means they haven't really gone. And same thing for power. Okay, those who are in pursuit of power, political power. It's like, well, what's your okay? Not to get all fucking lifestyle guru on you, but why do you get out of bed? What are you doing? Why? Like, those are tools for things. And that's, maybe that's because I've never had any money, and I've always been, and I've obviously been tempted by money in the past. I have obviously got a skill set where I could make a lot of money if I did this, certain things. Like, I could just set up an agency, set up a PR firm that's, got no ethics. Like, there's plenty of them where they will do lobbying, or they will do, dark marketing campaigns. I could run that shit. I could make a fucking killing doing dark shit. Okay. Instead, I make fuck all doing honest things. And that's because honest is a value for me. Okay. Being sincere. It's very hard to be sincere. And I'm going to talk about how I'm sort of working ultimately. Okay. If you need to know where I'm going with this, I need to explain why I trust Elon Musk, however complicated that might be, because it's complicated. My trust is a complicated emotion. Okay. And it's not a binary thing. A lot of people hide behind, and I've talked about this billionaire hate before. Even when you've got yes, billionaires shouldn't exist, but billionaires are a product of a system that rewards certain things. It's not, Elon Musk would be replaced with another person, or, they're all replaceable. It's part of a systemic problem. Blaming a billionaire for being a billionaire is no different, really, except in material. Obviously, they've got more power, they've got more money, all that sort of more resources, of course. But the mindset is no different to blaming a poor person for being poor. You're making it about morals, you're making it about the person, rather than showing up in good faith and going, okay, this is a problem with a system. How can we correct this so that this doesn't happen? Okay, this is where I want people's brains to shift and their minds to shift into, okay, well, let's maybe think about trust. Think about these things. Let's just embrace the complexity a bit more. That's all I'm saying. Is that, people are using these dumbass, first of all, simplistic takes, like Wikipedia takes on ideas. Okay. I have an idea, which I've been meaning to actually push. It's sitting there as an outline. I need to write it, but I can actually state my case in certain areas that, new money is still, workers. New money are still workers at the end of the day, because if it can be taken away, you're still a worker. If you can, and it's again, with the French Revolution, the lines were drawn between aristocracy and non-aristocracy. It wasn't necessarily about the amount of money you had. It's about the, entrenched systems and power systems, right? Anyway, so that's a whole digression. But that's a whole sort of thing I'm working on, again, around all of the million other things, so I can just buy a new fucking computer and pay my rent. But anyway, But I've been thinking about this thing about like when there's nothing wrong with, there's been, like I said, there's been so many times where I've taken something on face value. My gut has been like, okay, trust this thing, trust these people, trust what they're telling me. And it's been wrong and they've proven me wrong. Okay. Been in business for a very long time. I live invoice to invoice, project to project. Every project that I start, to a degree, has to have a clean slate in terms of trust. Otherwise, you would never, do it. Yes, you have like a 50% deposit up front. Okay. You have all of these things to sort of, make sure that you have your sort of your safeguards around that stuff, like legally. But even then, like every time you take on a new project or a new client or, new relationship, or meet a new friend or interact with an institution, okay, that's somewhat of a clean slate. Okay. If you're carrying the baggage of sort of what others have done, whilst valid, yes, because obviously that pattern, obviously I'm not telling you to not trust your gut and I'm not telling you to not trust your instincts because obviously, those things exist for a reason, which is to help us, okay? Most of the time with, people who have a repeated pattern with relationships or, toxic relationships or violent relationships or whatever, there's something early on that draws them to that. And so being alert for that is, where it's at. I'm not saying that this stuff is complicated, but it's the same thing with like government, right? Sometimes it has to be a case by case basis. Sometimes you have to take things on face value, but I think there's a thing in business called, hire slow, fire fast. Okay. Which is that, which was when you hire someone new. Okay. You need to take your time to hire them. That's why, again, making it a simple thing, and understanding why things exist and how we get here and the other side's argument and other side's perspective on sort of economic issues, power issues, all of that sort of stuff. People obviously, when you're doing analysis, like socialist analysis, you're going to be focused on those with the least power, of course, okay, which is workers. Okay, but I've managed teams, I've hired people, I've had to fire people. Okay, it's not fun. Okay, I've also set up a business where I early on decided that we should not be working the same way as everyone else. We had 4-day work weeks. We had, I would do, I've always done sort of favors for people in the hope that they came back. I've always been, built a reputation for myself for being someone who can rescue or fix or audit other people's work and make it, turn projects around and fix them and all that sort of stuff. That's something that I've always been really good at, is sort of rolling up my sleeves and getting stuff fixed. Okay. So, and I think maybe a big part of that experience is the thing that's shows that things are, I can understand why people come to the decisions that they do. And I've got multiple perspectives because I haven't been, I've been everything from a poor kid to, a retail worker, casual worker as a student. I had 3 jobs, just, all that sort of stuff, to, working in a salaried position to, I've sort of done sort of the full gamut of stuff, to also freelancing and being self-employed and running a business, but then also being an employer, and also, there's lots of things, and also, being a socialist. Like even with these fucking co-ops, it's like you do realize that co-ops still have to fire people. Co-ops still have to manage people. And it's like there is this sort of subset of sort of socialism, which I've talked about this before, which is that they think that they don't have to work and that they should just be given a job and that, they don't have to sort of do their part. And it's like, well, yeah, you shouldn't starve, but you also shouldn't be sort of, that's a different form of rent seeking, which is, the group assignment fuckwit that sort of leeches off of everyone else, right? That's a problem in socialism as well, okay? And it's a big one, which is that there's people who do get tremendous value and joy out of sort of working and creating and doing stuff. And, you do want to see that be worth it, because there is a sacrifice involved with working. There is and this is another thing where I think there's misunderstanding around capitalism. Again, there's lots of different ways to look at it, but I'm talking about the sort of super online dumb stuff, which is that, that capital does, providing, again, as someone who's been has over the years tried to get funding from venture capitalists for various products, which is that, yes, they're exploitative. Yes, they're predatory. Yes, they are, all of those problems. Okay. Yes, business people shouldn't have to seek private predatory, basically pay, sell their souls in order to get a product done. Like that's a fair criticism, right? But at the end of the day, like, there is a risk. Okay, so the way that venture capital works is that, they'll invest in like 100 businesses, but only one will succeed. Like, that's just business, okay? Now, when I say just business, yes, there's a lot of different forces. Yes, you could set up like, incubators, and all that sort of stuff. Like there are government grants. In Australia, you get a lot more sort of support for R&D and, all that sort of stuff. But, yeah, I agree. And that's what I'm saying. Willie Bragg actually said, as a past trade union member in the past, wheat workers who are intentionally slackers are problematic, but they deserve. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, like I said, people shouldn't starve. People shouldn't be punished for not working. I'm not saying that people should be. See, I think this is where the capitalism mindset versus socialism mindset. I think this is where they converge or diverge, but also converge, which is that everyone wants to be rewarded or see the return from their effort, okay? And I think that this is one of those things. And I know that this is where, trust is very much linked to alienation as well. Like, there's feelings of alienation. There's lots of things that go into sort of why I trust, because I sit and I go through all of these things as well. I'm saying that I want to be rewarded for my effort. I don't believe that those who choose not to work, if you go back through my other stuff, I've defended the anti-work movement before. I believe that, people should have, that it's inherently coercive and inherently anti-libertarian to force people to work to eat and survive and have shelter, okay? It's not just because we're on a pretty decent income and can't afford our rent. I don't feel like I cannot fathom how anybody on a lower income is living right now, because like I go, how the fuck are they doing it? And the answer is they're not. The answer is that, people are just losing their houses, and we're seeing the same shit over and over again. And, these big ass companies are just buying it up, like BlackRock, Vanguard. They're unaccountable. They are completely fucking, it's out of control. Okay. So there's lots. So when I talk about, actually, it's good that you're here because I can be precise. What I'm trying to do is get people out of sort of binary 1-0 thinking with these things and understand that sort of, seeing it from multiple perspectives, okay? Seeing things from multiple perspectives and acknowledging that perspective is also valid, and then moving forward towards a problem. This is one of my problems with, I think, the commentary left particularly, and sort of especially like the left wing. Okay, let's talk about Jimmy Dore, for example. Like, it's very easy to name the problem. It's very easy to attack the people who disagree. It's very easy to do what he does. Okay. It's not so easy to fix it. And the problem is that there is a point where, and I understand, okay, so let me qualify that too. I'm coming at this from an Australian point of view, where we're more stable. I think we've had this exchange before. Like, I understand America's going through something at the moment where just getting an awareness of the problem is the problem. Okay, so naming the problem, getting people on board with the problem, getting people on board with just the fact that capitalism doesn't work, we're at a different point. We're sort of relatively more stable, okay? Like, we have, like, the government in power at the moment is, a union party, okay? The Labor Party is running things at the moment. We've got a solid tradition with unions. You fuck with the unions, you fuck with the tradies. Generally, you don't. I mean, Murdoch has done his bit to erode that stuff, and over time, yes, it's been eroded, mostly due to pressure from global corporations to, do individual agreements and sort of erode that system. But for the most part, I know I've digressed, but these concepts are linked, and I do just go where sort of my thoughts lie. Okay, I try to have an umbrella and sort of meander there. But this will link to why I sort of don't trust, but also do kind of trust Elon Musk on various things. Okay. Even if he makes it very difficult, okay, he does. He makes it, and I think anybody who backs him unconditionally is an idiot. But I can qualify my trust with, I kind of get where he's going. I understand his worldview. I don't like his behavior, but I also think that he can learn from it. If you just, it's like, okay. So this is, again, let's just talk about it. It's a separate thing. So it is linked to sort of the trust in institutions, what institutions need to do because of the lack of transparency. Like the theme here really is transparency breeds trust, okay? The lack of transparency from everybody, but there is a transparency to Musk. There is a transparency to Trump, okay? That's the problem. There is a transparency problem. And, this is backed by research, which is public trust research, okay? Transparency, okay? People first, public first, user first, expressing those things. It's not just about whether someone is populist or not or anything. It is actually about people are so desperate. But that's another reason why comedians are so revered at the moment, because they have trust. There's an honesty there, right? That's where I'm going. Anyway, it's a backward honesty. Even ironically, like I've said, with, people who are out there, bad guys, people who are openly evil are more honest than people who are pretending that they're not evil. It's more complicated than, So that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about trust, because that stuff works somewhat on the subconscious, okay? And that stuff sort of, I'm trying to kind of unpack why I might trust certain people over another, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's an authenticity, there's a transparency, even if I don't like them, even if I don't fully trust it, there is a choice. I'm looking for someone to trust. I'm looking for someone who I can listen to, and I'm looking, because there's a lot of people who, and I'm just trying to help you to navigate that space, the way I do, which is because I've obviously, I'm better at going through these things than most people and sort of coming out the other side. There's a lot of people selling these things, but they're not, there's a lot of ways you can tell that they're not trustworthy. So, so that, I won't derail too much with this thing, but yes, in America, there is a cult of the work ethic whereby in our culture, people think they're going to get, so that's just Puritan. So that's that's in the veins, deep in the veins of American history. Obviously I'm a Catholic, so I'm very different. Catholicism generally is, sort of the breeding ground for labor movement, believe it or not, more, anyway, that's a whole other thing. But, that whole Puritans left England. That's what they did because they couldn't get their own way. And there's that whole Puritan work ethic that sort of, is, rife in America. But it's not, and this is something that I just want to point out to you, Willie, which is that America isn't just America. America's domestic problems. America's domestic problems are our problems. America is a proxy government for the rest of the world, especially Australia. It's often joked that we're the 51st state. A lot of the erosion of education, health, our institutions, we've literally got an American base, here. We are forced under our, look that up. CIA coup, Australia, 1975. Look it up. Which is that, every time that, obviously the same MO, which is that every time a leader tries to do anything that goes against the interests of the United States, that they are at their mercy. We're forced to do certain things. We're at their mercy, okay? Now, because of our location and our trade relationship with China, we're somewhat sort of more friendly, but, I hope we know where our bread's buttered. But I'm saying that this is where Americans really just aren't really familiar with the rest of the world and the impact that this shit is having on the rest of the world, right? So, look up Gough Whitlam. and what happened with that, and John Pilger's work on that. Now, and this is where it's funny, because actually that helps me go back on topic, which is around trust, which is that when that story broke, what was the line that the CIA said? And what did Bill Clinton? There's no evidence to suggest that this happened. Well, of course there isn't. But every single time it's happened, they've said that. And this is where it comes back to transparency. It's like, and it's the same thing. Like, I mean, anybody who, thankfully, I've never been in this position, but I know what it's like to try and make a relationship work, obviously, because I've, been married and divorced, okay, with children and complicated. You want to stay and keep the family together, right? Or, you're sort of stuck and you want it to work. But thankfully, I've never been in a position where I've been in a relationship with someone who cheats repeatedly, okay? I like to think that, it's just not a thing. It's just not a thing. But if in some weird parallel universe, my husband sort of cheated on me, I don't know if I could sort of get over it, because it's kind of a deal breaker. But then again, I might, because I tend to be forgiving, and again, it's like the situation. But so, but it's the same thing with like all of these institutions. And I found it really interesting. And my ex-husband, when COVID first hit, it was actually very funny, because it's something that intuitively we all know. And he has this way of just cutting through bullshit and just saying the right thing, right? He's funny. He's like Carl Pilkington, right? From, that guy, Carl Pilkington, if you know him. He's very much like that, right? And so when we were talking about how COVID was, hit and all that stuff, and organising, my son and, how he'd move and where he'd stay and all that sort of stuff, he goes, well, America's fucked. And, we saw it just play out that way, because that's how the rest of the world sees that. And it was very funny, because America then turned around and started saying that Australia was an authoritarian state and all of this bullshit. You had people on the streets fighting for their First Amendment rights, which is hilarious. I've documented all this, thankfully. I'm glad I actually did all that, right? So it's just streaming throughout, because it was funny. But at the same time, it's like trying to explain to an American that we mostly trust our government to do the right thing, even when they're like corrupt. Okay, like ours, like the previous government has really managed to erode that trust. Okay, but for the most part, because we have these things like public health system, we have for all their flaws at the moment, it's very stretched. They're still dealing with a massive backlog from COVID. The federal government is recovering from a neocon like party that sort of, whose MO is sort of selling the Australian government, they're selling public utilities off for parts, right? So we've had like a good decade or two, nearly two, of these kinds of policies that have been sort of eroding Whitlam's institutions over time. For private health insurance companies, for private, for profit. Thankfully we've got the PBS, when medicine is like, you'd be amazed, Willie, that medicine is like, even if you've got a healthcare card, it's like, I think $6 for every script, like, that you other than, private meds, which are, that's like the new experimental, stuff. There's usually a public option for the drug, or a process in order to get PBS coverage. So we've got these things in place. And even if you're if you've not got a sort of pension card or a healthcare card, sort of, it's capped at sort of, $20, and generics are widely available and that sort of stuff. So it's really, our trust in medicine is fairly, good. Our trust that our hospitals are doing a good job is there, for the most part. And that's where, you can see that direct link between the economic situation and public trust. And I think, I said this, I can't remember if it may have even been before 2020. And I was saying about how important, and because I come from sort of that, user experience, customer facing, customer focused stuff. And it comes back to transparency. It comes back to being focused on the public. It comes back to knowing whose interests they're sort of working for. And this is, again, it's kind of complicated, but, like obviously, and also, again, because I also worked in child protection. As a graduate, I worked in welfare and child protection, and obviously with race relations and various other things. You are the face of the government, whether you like it or not. You are the face of that oppression. Even if, I think I talked about this before, which is that even though I might actually be on a wage that's roughly similar to their benefits, I was a level 2-4 field worker. I wasn't on a lot of money. And, you can see how that resentment might come in, but you represent power to people. And so every touch point, with government or with the bank or with, corporations or, online or with the information, it is really crucial that you have people's trust. The first thing that they will do if they don't trust you is, first of all, they won't listen. They definitely won't change their mind. And they definitely won't change behavior. People will change behavior if they trust you, okay? And when you lose people's trust, I don't see how anyone is surprised by any of that. That's the root cause of this so-called disinformation. You can't punish people into complying. You can't censor it. You can't, it's just so backward. And this is why it feels like an act of desperation. A lot of this stuff with the overreach with, the department, it's come out that the Department of Homeland Security, again, has these programs that, like spying on American citizens, that they are, there's no accountability. The CIA obviously does that. Americans are only, often only concerned that it's American citizens. That's one of my funny things with Snowden was everyone was more upset when Snowden said that the NSA existed. It's not the CIA. It's yeah, they do it to me too. You think I don't object to that? It's oh yeah, I got quote tweeted by Taibbi for that. That was cool. But it was just, and, quite a few people messaged and said, yes, I know, right? So they're perfectly fine with them spying on the rest of us. But, I'm being glib. But love you, America. We love you. But it's, it's an adorable, you're like Homer Simpson. You're a fucking jerk-ass Homer. We love you. It's frustrating. Like Elon Musk. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, you represent, if you're a good faith person and you engage in ideas in good faith and you love people first. You see their flaws, you see their ups and downs, you see them learn their lesson. We're all failing upwards. All of us. Yes, even the President of the United States. Yes, even every bureaucrat you've ever met. Yes, your parents. Everyone is just trying to figure shit out as they go, okay? And somehow, there's this big lie that, somehow you're just suddenly going to get it figured out. And suddenly you're going to have all this merit. And that suddenly, it's all going to come together. And it's talk to someone in their 70s and 80s. They still don't fucking know because the world changes, okay? It's just the world changes. And this is where I think we need to cut people some slack just in general, which is that things change. Same thing like the gender debate, okay? However you feel about it. Not seeing it as it should be and castigating people who aren't on your, your side. When I try to just explain the basics, okay, to people and they go, I don't understand. My sister years ago, she was like, okay, what's going on? Okay, so what's feminism then? Start with the basic. But there's this assumed knowledge and assumed thing. All right, sex versus gender. And she goes, too hard, I don't understand. And she shuts down. Okay? Most people like that. Politics is for dorks. Okay? Remember that. Politics is for dorks to most people. And I'm queen of dorks. But anyone who's making politics look cool or fun, I would, again, be skeptical. Anyone who makes it entertainment, because politics is for dorks. Politics is boring. Politics is important, which means that you need people who take it with the gravity and sincerity and good faith, all of these things, that they're doing things in good faith because they care about people. That's the only reason anyone should be in politics. And that's what, and it's the same. And the media is supposed to be representative of the people, not at the mercy of fucking billion-dollar corporations who have, like, again, it's that top-down stuff. So anyway, I digressed. But, that idea of the fact that, you're supposed to be when you are customer-centric, user-centric, people-centric, human-centered. I'm a human-centered designer. I'm the last remaining human-centered designer. Rather than this, and this was like one of my early criticisms of like where the industry had gone, which was that it started as this grassroots disruption movement of sort of, being like Twitter. Let's talk about Twitter for a minute. Like Twitter, if you've been on it since the beginning, the @ symbol was not a feature. Hashtag, not a feature. Quote tweet, not a feature. Retweet wasn't a feature. Retweet was, used as a way of acknowledging. So retweet at that person was a way of attributing and responding to their thing that was user generated. The hashtag was generated by users as a way of sorting around. So they had the search function. And so what they thought was, well, okay, we want to be able to sort this out. So the hashtag and the word was a way for people to rally around that thing. And then you would have like one at the Edge of the Web conference in 2008 that I was at. And that was one of those early uses of sort of tech conference Twitter. And that feature came from users at the conference, and then they would have a screen of all the tweets around that hashtag. And, that was the history of that stuff. Okay? This is how it started. It started, Twitter in particular, as a product, came from users. It came from users sharing their thoughts. It came from users trusting that this was not going to be abused. It came from users giving their fucking, design ideas. It was collaborative. Like obviously in 2023, some wanker has a course and a book and a set of things called co-design or, all those things, okay? Everything that you do becomes a fucking, self-help book or a business book because Robin DiAngelo is a fuckwit, Dr. Phil, they're all fuckwits that take good ideas and turn them into a product. But you take them and you go, okay, this co-design concept started with, it didn't start there, but, it started like these concepts like lean user experience design, which was something where, and this is an approach, okay, lean UX, okay, lean product, where there's a whole thing. It's a rapid development life cycle. And you're seeing this play out with Twitter, which is basically where you have a hypothesis, you start a thing, you implement it quickly, to get like a minimum, you may have heard minimum viable product before. You get an MVP, okay? You get that, and then what you do is you just do small features. It's called iteration. So you iterate. So you basically just add on features, you test, you constantly test, you put it out, you test it, you get feedback, you change it. You put it out, you test it, you measure it, and you sort of adjust your product. Twitter, Facebook, move fast, break things. That was Facebook. Lean UX was very much, that philosophy. Okay. Now that philosophy is very much at odds with, waterfall project management. Okay, which was milestones. Would take, in traditional projects, right? Milestones would take, months, sometimes years. Like to do it like a transformation project for a big company, like a bank. Okay, that's like billions of dollars. Like I remember when I was working on projects with one of the major big four here, and it was a $5 billion project just to change people's laptops. Because there's just so many, there's like planning and risk management and stakeholder management, change management, the physical installation of things, and what tech did was come in and go, no, we're just going to just put it up there, just do it and see what happens. Okay, those are two different mindsets that are in conflict with each other and at odds, and you see that play out a little bit, which is that there's the establishment, okay? There's a way to do things. This is the proper way to do things. This is the appropriate way to do things. And then you've got the people over here that are like, fuck it, let's break it. Let's do it. Who cares? It'll figure it itself out. Now, those two forces both have their strengths, okay? And so what I do is I sit in both of these worlds, which is that I've developed enough MVPs to know that, that's not the full story, that there does need to be a process. Like a big part of my job when I was running the agency was talking people out of features and talking people out of giving me money and going, no, you haven't got a strategy. You need a strategy. You need to think it through. Yes, we can adapt and we can do it quickly, but you need to do the thinking first. Because if you go into this sort of rapid cycle, this rapid development, and there's chaos without a clear plan and know where you're going, it's going to go badly. Okay. And this is where the chaos that's happening in America, and this, this is where it's why I fall on the side of people who are doing sort of more of the break things stuff, because there is a transparency in the process. Okay. But like I said, both have their strengths, and these are the tensions that we're actually seeing. Okay. But there is a way forward, which is that, don't be afraid. And this is the same thing with like socialists who are revolutionary versus reform. Those, it's like, well, reformists largely believe that, going back to the drawing board is kind of, we don't have, you get what I'm saying? Like going back is counterproductive versus revolutionaries who, ultimately sort of, I do trust. I do believe in I believe that revolutionary is inevitable. I want to avoid it with reform, right? Again, it's not either or. It's what is, okay, which is what's workable, how things work based on the evidence, and it's not like that. And the problem with your sort of your hammer and sickle fucking Twitter, like I said, is that they're not coming with solutions based on how things are. And this is, again, I've observed this week with Marianne Williamson. And I'm actually going to be on a podcast tomorrow that I disagree with on this, which is that, they're sort of not on board with Marianne Williamson's campaign for president. So she's decided to primary Joe Biden. I like Marianne. I like who Marianne is friendly with. Again, let's talk about trust again. There's a few people that I just really trust, and I trust their judgment. Okay. And a few of those are just people that I know who know Marianne, or people that just follow through our life who I've sort of like an anchor, okay, throughout my life. Doug Stanhope. So when Doug Stanhope spoke out with the Johnny Depp thing, I listened because I trust Doug Stanhope. You get what I'm saying? Like I go, okay, well, that's not true. I'm more inclined to trust him, okay, than I am other people because he hasn't really let me down. And it's the same thing with, other artists, musicians, whatever, that I know and have worked with or whatever. Okay, there's various people that I trust more than I trust others. And this is where, because they've earned it over the years. And so I have been more inclined to, when they speak, to give them the benefit of the doubt. And one of the things that's annoyed me over the years is that, a lot of people don't trust me as much as I thought they did because, I've given, anyway. But I'm just saying, when I speak from a good place, and I would hope that people trust that I would do the right thing because I have absolutely no incentive to do otherwise. I have I misworded that. Every incentive to do the opposite of that. And if I was, so like I have all of the money, all of the opportunities, all of the networks to do absolutely the opposite. Okay. Like I said, I've straddled these worlds. I know what it is. I've had conservative parties approaching me to run all of these things over the years. Okay. And I fight it. It's a tough fight. Right. So it reminds me of Addiction by Design, Machine Gambling in Las Vegas. That book at bottom finds the human-centeredness in the evolution of the video poker. Creating a zone state that users liked. Yes, and that's where it has, like when people, and this is, I think, my initial thing when Elon Musk bought Twitter, my knee-jerk, is because I understand his worldview. But I also understand how that worldview is misunderstood. I also understand how that worldview can turn into poker machines and dark patterns and censorship and suppression and lying. And I go, there's a complexity. There's an inherent tension around customer-focused, human-centered design that is wholly dependent on your intentions. Okay, so there's a that's the thing where it's like, okay, some of these things are like nudges. Okay, there's another book called Nudge. I can't remember the author's name, but it's a very famous book about like choice architecture. I've covered it before, where nudging people in a certain direction, like that actually has tremendous power. Okay, any persuasive anything in persuasion. There's a very fine line between persuasion and manipulation. And the difference between persuasion and manipulation is, first of in the eye of the beholder, and also, largely down to intent and how you use it and whether you are open about it. Like, whether these things sort of live and die on ethics. And this is why ethics, it's not the law that actually, because especially in tech, like tech law is so fucking behind. We're a decade behind where we need to be, because this should have been addressed like a decade ago, as I have said repeatedly. But no one would listen because they were, okay, to come back to what Sam said, that's actually a good point, because where this went wrong and where we were asleep was that most of us were going into this, we didn't realise. I went in going, this is we're creating frictionless experiences. We're giving people what they want. This is win-win. Facebook, like still, it was a win-win situation. I still believe that there is an ideal, there's an equilibrium there that we're trying to figure out. And it's like, this is where it needs to be. We're not there yet, but we can. It's just, this is where you have to trust in systems to sort of correct with time. And we're sort of seeing that. Anyway, that's a whole separate thing. But I trusted my peers because I'm a good person and I am human-centered and I have user trust and I have, I built like, a weirdly like chaotic career. Okay, do have some cachet in the industry as a sort of early adopter and early leader and early maker, and made all the same mistakes that everybody else made. I'm a decade ahead of my industry because I was so early in a lot of these things, and I just was trying it out. Okay, I just never. I wish I'd gone down the writing books path rather than the being busy making shit for clients path, because I didn't write stuff down, but in my day-to-day practice, I was making human-centered design all the time. I've always been about people, and why I went into tech out of social work was because I thought that I could make more of a difference to more people at a larger scale than I could, one-to-one, working for the government, right? That was I wanted to sort of scale my good, right? That was the naive thing. So many tech founders sort of bought, okay? And so that's sort of our word. I think I've talked about this with the stream when Musk first took over Twitter, which was trying to explain the mindset of tech guys, is that it is utopian, like in terms of that, which is that Musk truly does believe that he is fixing these things. It's not a lie. Okay, it's just that unfortunately there's all of these sort of tensions and like laws, inconvenient laws, but laws and, legacy and all those things that sort of, like make it a lot more complicated. Okay, like the idea that you can't mock a fucking disabled employee in front of that sort of thing. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. I'll talk about that. But we bought it, and a lot of it is that we trusted our peers. We trusted that there was a third way. That's where you always go wrong, is trusting that there's a third way. It's not that there's a third way. It's just that it's ongoing, constant compromise and spot fires, and democracy's messy. Okay, that it's not that there is. That's where we need to shift our thinking. There is no one answer. There is no way. The only way is to push through it and be messy and figure it out. That's it. That's all we've got. There's like pillars of speech, and even that has its downsides. There's pillars of participation, and that's why I will defend people's right to participate no matter what. that's just, there's some things that you can just go, no, this works better than the other, which is you don't have all good ideas come from everywhere. And through consulting, I'm not just going to sit there and talk to the CEO about a product. I'm not just going to go, I'm going to go and talk to users. I'm going to go watch how they use it. I'm going to, see what they do. Now, the problem is also psychopaths exist, right? People who are self-interested, people who are only about the money and clout and power and all of those sorts of things. And this sort of was a blind spot for a lot of us in tech, which was that, we all bought in on this idea that we could shift the power balance. And this is where I think this is my frustration, with the lefts, whatever the fuck that means anymore. It's got no meaning anymore. But, the broader sort of left-wing thought around this is that, neither of these things are, well, first of all, ideology is stupid anyway. Marx said that. But that's a rigidity of thinking that doesn't provide solutions for the most part. Okay, you can take ideas from everywhere. There's good ideas from everywhere. There's good ideas from billionaires. Billionaires can do good things. Billionaires can do evil things. People don't always operate in self-interest. Sometimes they operate in, people behave, in complicated ways that they may not see, that might not see happening in the background. Like reminder that there's humans with a struggle who are figuring it out as they go along, and we just need to make a system better and more robust that sort of actualizes a sort of a better version of ourselves and encourages that. That's all we can do. Okay, there's 8 billion of us. It's not easy. Can't even trying to deal with fucking 4 autists in my house is hard enough with their rigid fucking food choices and all that. 8 billion people with preferences. It's far from simple. Okay. But we did buy that. And that's sort of the flip side of human-centered design, flip side of sort of, transparency. But that's also the flip side of something like Twitter being transparent and being honest with their users. Because Twitter being honest and accessible with their users meant that bad guys knew how things worked. Okay. And early on, if you're on Twitter early on, you knew that bots were using hashtags. So they'd camp on the hashtag. That's why we can't have nice things. Bad guys, 10% of fuckwits, are why we can't have nice things. 90% of people are good. They're doing the right thing. Okay. 9% are selfish. 1% are actually evil. Most people, they're not selfish. They're just complicated, and I believe, again, when people aren't set up to fail, base of capitalism, when people aren't, when they aren't pushed into having to operate in self-interest, when they are given all of the tools, they're generally good and they do the right thing. Okay. But, you can't assess people's worth or ethics or value in a system that encourages people to be their worst version of themselves. That's the socialist argument, right? Socialism as a base ultimately just gives people a shot to be better and to be good. Okay, it's not a utopian view. It's just a baseline that give people a shot, don't set them up to fail, and humans can do good things and reward fucking good behaviour. It's not difficult, but it's also tremendously difficult with these forces. But yeah, so again, being user centered. The problem is ethics and bad guys and regulating across the board, deciding where we regulate, what behaviour we regulate, what the punishments are, making the punishment a deterrent, but not so hard that it is, obviously in breach of things like civil rights. Okay, some of these things are just not fit for purpose, especially around the internet. Okay? Like speech. Yes, it's a fundamental right. Yes. However, in practice, that assumes there's many assumptions built into that. 1, that they're human and not a bot. 2, that they're acting in good faith as a citizen, not paid troll farms, right, that are just there to be malicious. That they're not, obviously defamation, various other things. Like I am someone who basically, if you defame someone, take it to the court, make defamation more accessible, make defamation law more accessible, okay? Much like Elon Musk announced last week, there was a whole drama around this, but frivolous copyright claims, abusing these things. It's like, well, that's where regulation should kick in, which is that That's not what we meant, the spirit of things, rather than the actual literal. Again, this is probably more of an American thing where everything is more heavily codified, whereas here we operate a lot more on convention. And what do we mean by that? That's not what we meant. Stop being a fuckwit. Like, that's sort of the Australian way, whereas America, it's like, well, technically it's legal. Like, that's just a different political culture. It's anyway, I wandered off. So, but a big part of like trust is whether people. Okay, so this is how I decide who I trust, and that's not it's not necessarily a binary thing. You can, much like, if you're dating, for example, and you've been hurt enough, if you get to a point where you've been hurt enough times, you're going to be hard. It's going to be hard to trust people. Okay, but you need to trust in order to have. It's like a chicken and egg problem. You need to trust, otherwise it's going to affect the relationship that you're in, and you're not going to be fully open to the opportunity. And it's the same thing with information. It's the same thing with institutions. Like, if you lose all trust in institutions, you're less inclined to participate. You're less inclined to think that you can change things. You're less inclined to work on yourself, because it becomes a thing where, everybody else is to blame and you're not, we all contribute to these things in whatever way, okay? It's not your fault. It's good to explore why you do what you do, like with my fuck up the other day where I cheered on Elon Musk when he was bullying a guy with muscular dystrophy who, by all accounts, looks like a decent guy. And I had it wrong, and my impulse, and I was like, okay, well, that was fucking stupid of me, wasn't it? I let my own personal grievance with Twitter and their design team cloud my judgment in this instance, because I kind of, again, like, being self-aware about your own behavior is probably the biggest thing that you could do. First, if you work on yourself first, you're more inclined to give other people slack, because then you realize that you are, that everyone else is just as complicated as you are. You learn to forgive others more quickly, because, you're doing that work to forgive yourself. If you don't understand why you think a certain way, or have certain emotions, or react in certain ways, or or debrief on mistakes that you've made, you're not going to do it for other people. You're not going to sit there and be you're not going to you're not going to understand the motivations of others. So I think that it does start, and this is something where auditing yourself and how you operate in the world helps you to be generally better. Okay, and that's not personal responsibility lecture. That's actually, this is Alfred Adler, socialist psychologist, says this. So it's not just about, it's all collective, it's all the society problem, it's all, all that sort of structural stuff. But at the end of the day, like, you do still need to work on you to be a good self-actualized person. That's still part of it, right? So I recently said something, you recently said something I liked about seeing ideas as marketing funnels. Any elaboration on that and why you conceive it as a funnel? Well, that's just because that's how information works online. So if you look at any kind of culture war issue, you'll see that, this is where, I've talked about this actually like quite a lot in other streams. So I'll just, but basically it's just, if you've got an issue that you're talking about online, someone's looking for you. Looking at it, okay? They will then gather lists. Like, there was a thing that went viral yesterday where people, some sort of pro-rape thing or something, and obviously it was obvious. It had like the Greco-Roman statue. It was misogynistic. It was posted on International Women's Day. Like, the timing of it was a bit sus. And when you understand that, like, sort of these other things that are happening, like, the free API being closed on Twitter and these various other things that are moving, you'll understand that, and also this idea that sometimes bad guys, they operate with lists, right? Email list. They pull data. Like, this is what what they do is they'll sort of honeypot sort of a post, and what they'll do is they'll gather information. So the reason I'm on all these lists is because I fucking, I talk about these things and I take their like posts, and then they add me to their lists of good guys, bad guys, whatever. And in the background, they'll sort of, recalibrate their troll farms and recalibrate their bots to target specific accounts. The way that the mass report scripts work is that you need a list of accounts to post to, okay, using these scripts. It doesn't just, so I can see how that would just be a honeypot. So if you're talking about an issue, you are like, especially a divisive one where, like the far right or ISIS or bad guys or anything like that, where all of these issues will get you on someone's list, okay? Whether it's like, this is just old spam shit, the same thing. You talk about something on LinkedIn and someone sends you an email. It's like, oh my God, really? That kind of thing. It's the same shit. Yet they just build lists and then they sell those lists on to other agencies. Or if you're running it, in most cases, they're probably running a digital agency where they've got, 50 clients. Like in the case of things like Act Blue and Win Red, those when I've talked about those platforms, it's the Democratic Party's data platform, WinRed's data platform. You get on that, you get all their emails. They've got all, they're doing research on you all of the time, and they're sort of assigning you with a score. I've talked about the Obama campaign's persuasion score was sort of it wasn't the first, but it was, and I've talked about Coney 2012 and how that was a lesson for bad, like all these things were learned over time. But basically what happens is you just participating on public platforms and social media. And I don't want you to be scared of this. I just want you to be mindful. Okay. This is why being able to spot these things is really important. And know, like for me, I could tell that it was a honeypot post, but people were reacting to it and engaging with it like it was real. And it's like, no, they're trying to get people who they know that they can tick off, add them to a list. Then what they will do is use their mass report scripts. Okay. This is like, it's so obvious to someone who knows what they're doing, that they put that list of user accounts in the mass report script so that they can then harass them with, whatever tools they're using on Twitter and nudge them in various directions. We've seen this with the anti-vax bots and various other things where that's why you'll see, TERFs that can't they started off a certain way and then they ended up on the list and they just were nudged over time by bots. I deeply recommend, strongly recommend you install Bot Sentinel's Chrome plugin if you've got access. Now it's not perfect. Obviously, there's bias towards certain things. Like lefties, I've noticed, even if they're legit, tend to be flagged as like with a higher fake score than they are. But a lot of that is to do with the behavior, like because lefties are more aggressive and, activists are more aggressive. Activists are going to be like flagged as problem or bot and stuff like that, because if you're sitting there mentioning people and swearing at people and fucking, doing that shit and getting into the weeds of the culture wars and politics, you're going to be flagged by these things. But I find it to be a really good tool just as this is flashing red, that's a bot, but also I can spot these things without them, but I do find it useful to sort of know who you're engaging with. But anyway, that's the side point. But these marketing funnels, like this does come back to trust, because a lot of it is that you don't know what to trust because all of these things are operating in the background, and anyone who says that they're not is probably running one. Okay, I find it fascinating that the Daily Wire, don't fess up to the fact that they do this, even though they've been caught. Because they know that they can just mass report the people. I mean, that was really funny with Twitter. I didn't do my Daily Wire stream. I can't screen share with this computer at the moment. I'm just sitting here. That's why I'm sitting here riffing. There's not much I can do. I just need to keep showing up, because I don't want to go backwards. Until I can get a new computer, it's sort of quite difficult. But we'll get there. The Daily Wire thing. Where, but also, the Majority Report and the Young Turks and those media ecosystems. Like TYT runs a multi-channel network, which is a network of other channels where they kind of fall into line and they shed, they definitely boost it with bots and troll farms and idiots and, their audiences. Like if you actually look into the TYT army, they recruit people. There's every incentive to have fake engagement at every step of the way. And one red flag is those who won't talk about that. That was one of the early red flags for me with this sort of IDW culture war stuff, where they're talking about, the trans issue or gender issue or like these things. And they love bombed me early on. They were all wanting me on their things. They were all talking to me. They all wanted Taya was going to be a fucking star, all that shit, right? But every time I talked, I would reach a dead end where I was recording it and we were, vice versa. I was, we were talking about it. But every single time I raised the fake engagement, everyone would shut down on me. And it was just really fascinating to see. And then I noticed that those that aren't going to, that's how you can just kind of go, well, if you're, part of it initially I thought was because they didn't know what I was talking about, because I do have a tendency to sort of go off on a fucking wavelength that people don't understand. I've had to, if anything, the last 4 years my focus has been trying to just like baseline stuff. Okay. I get that. But it wasn't that. I thought that it initially was that the intersect, because people didn't understand they didn't see the magic eye painting that I saw, which was because I just happened to have political science training, happened to have sort of this experience with business on both sides, as in just lots of different areas, happened to be political organizing, but also, extremely tech savvy, know how to do all the political manipulation and how to do a political campaign online, but also the shady practices, because I ran an agency and was competing with dodgy agencies like SEO and stuff and doing audits of those places, that I knew that they were doing these things habitually and how widespread it was. Excuse me, dry throat. But you see, so like it was just one of those things where it was just glaringly obvious. So every time I raised it as an answer, they're like, that was really interesting. My interview with Megan Murphy was interesting like that, where I was like, you do know that large parts of this are astroturfed. What? Yeah, like they're like fake followers and stuff. And they're, oh yeah, no, okay. And they move on. And then, but anytime I went into depth on it, I did that with Benjamin Boyce actually, where I went into detail on how to do this, and it never went live. Because I know, and again, I thought it was because I was shit at YouTube, but then you see people who are a lot shitter at YouTube not be, and you go, it's not that. I think it's the fact that a lot of them are sort of propping their accounts up with bots, and the second that someone talks about it, this problem that is endemic in the tech industry, especially in influencer town, fake followers, a lot of it is propped up with fake followers. A lot of it is propped up by these agencies. Like it's just glaringly obvious, because I just reverse engineered and I said, well, if I was told that I had to sell crack to babies, what would I do? Here you go. Step. Easy. Set up a dark agency, hide it behind some not-for-profits, dodgy up the data, do this stuff, dodgy that up, massage that. Get a bunch of influencers in that are they're not in the loop, but they're also fucking they're also buying fake followers because they want to be an influencer. It's like, okay, it's obvious that this shit's mostly marketing funnel. So that's where I think that people need to be more alert and aware that when you talk about this is why I stopped talking about the turf wars in sort of any meaningful capacity, other than the fact that, I make my views not a secret. There's nothing to hide. I haven't necessarily changed my position, because my position hasn't changed really. Which is because I've always been, I've never been that anyway. That's just, I'm not, I believe that there's a policy issue there that needs to be addressed and discussed out in the open and resolved, not, and fixed through the courts. That's it, my position hasn't changed. I've stopped talking about it because I've realized that this was sort of feeding this sort of funnel to this more extreme content. And I've just watched it over and over again. I watched the fucking, someone who gets called a TERF and someone who's just, I don't understand what's happening with J.K. Rowling. All of a sudden they're getting clicks and love bombed by the same bots that I was. And, they're just drifting, and then they've left the left, and it's funny because now we're getting I left the right. It's just the same shit, right? It's just so stupid. But if you're a good faith, you don't leave anything. What is it? Facebook group? What are you leaving? What are you fucking leaving? Have you been to a meeting? Ever? What are you leaving? Are you an elected representative who's crossing the floor? Otherwise, what are you talking about? What are you leaving? I left it in my mind. Okay, then. I unfriended some people on Facebook. Okay, then. What the fuck? Anyway, that's a whole side point. But but you see that drift. I've watched it time and time again, and it's only because I know what this is that I didn't. I'm somewhat immune to it, right? Because I just know how these things work. I've explained audience capture as well before. There's just 600 hours of content to talk about this. I've got so much. I do need to sit down and edit just some clips and stuff. I just, unfortunately, that those who are in the business of truth are not necessarily, okay, in the business of seeking truth and being accurate and more pragmatic and honest and those sorts of things, is it's not that lucrative, but that's okay. That's okay. So it's just one of those things. But that's that funnel is, it doesn't matter what the issue is. Okay. You could be talking about, it's just really that early, like, oh, did you tweet about #iPad? Then iPad bots show up. Like that's been around since Twitter. That was what I went viral for making fun of in 2011, right? That it's pretty obvious if you've got sort of experience in this stuff. And I could detail it. The problem is, actually, I might not get in trouble now because I got inroads with Twitter. I might actually be able to do this as educational content and get a pass on it. Because I've been on the last strikes thing for so long with Twitter, I've been reluctant to use there was that one video where I said $20 in an hour and how I can astroturf something, right? And I did that. And I made a video where I just went and bought likes for $20 and had an argument with 2 different accounts that I run and made it and swooped a few people that follow me up in it. And all of a sudden they're all arguing. If you do that with $20, imagine what you can do with $1 million. Or if you're funded by billionaires, imagine how that scales, that you can just simulate a whole thing. You can just make it all happen. And then you have, if you own the press as well, you can turn around and just make it happen. That's why you see all these headlines go into sync, because even if you're a good journalist and you go by numbers, this is what I tried to explain this before. I might on another thing, I might try to explain this again in more detail. But even if you're a good actor, so researcher or journalist, even a good journalist, because the data is so skewed, because anyone can just run this stuff and astroturf, you can look and see, even if it's 1,000 troll farms and they're not authentic accounts, it takes a really super trained eye, super online fuckface with no life to spot these things. And I still get caught, right? I still get caught by bots and stuff. Okay. And I can spot them in nobody else. But even a good faith journalist, let's say Glenn Greenwald's a good example, where you sort of drift into certain things. Elon Musk, he's been drifting, he's so many bots and so many, nudges. And I imagine these people are targets by these campaigns where, it affirms their biases, it affirms a lot of these things, it, rewards them with love and affection and, all of that sort, and, clout and all these things. If you say a certain thing, they're sort of being nudged and encouraged and discouraged and attacked. I mean, and this was actually, I mentioned this in the last stream, this thing with the Digital Services Act, where this is where it comes back to trust. Because when you see that there is a whole narrative factory going on where they are obviously lying, they are obviously using bots, they are obviously using influencers. I've talked about Matt Binder before, how he's propped up with bots, even if he's an honest actor, which I doubt. I think he knows because he goes quiet. I think Sam Cedar doesn't realise, but, the ones underneath him do, that they are part of these networks of bullshit and that they are just paid to spread. You can find anyone who's willing to spread lies if they're motivated by clout and they're motivated by money, or and it's just easy to just get to somebody and just send them 1,000 messages from 1,000 different accounts that look authentic, and you start to think that that's public opinion. Again, I've gone through this. I've gone viral. I was one of the very early first people to really figure that little fucking, hide that little attack vector out with the media, that they're lazy and that they're under pressure to have a story and they will amplify it. Now, my last stream also with disinformation shows that most of these online things, most of these online tools, online bots, troll farms, all that shit doesn't really go anywhere unless the media picks it up. And it's only when the media picks it up, especially mainstream media, that stuff spreads. So this is where, making sure that there is policy around ethics in journalism. There is policy around transparency with the audience about and disclosing interest, disclosing where you get your money from. making sure that your sources are verified and are people, and not just, passively reporting on angry people at Twitter or on Twitter. And also, knowing that Musk is this is part of the reason why this API stuff is being dealt with and shut down, and why he's saying that you need to rewrite the product, not so much because there's so many leaks and so many holes in a security sense. It's not about the physical security so much of the product. It's more about the social engineering and the the other things I've talked about before, which is, the social engineering side of Twitter, where these people have massive data sets that they've vacuumed. This is like a Cambridge Analytica kind of situation where, these political forces now have massive databases of users that they have been nudging and persuading and attacking and mass reporting and, for years and years and years. You need to make some extreme decisions to from a product point of view, to plug some of those holes. Again, I understand this from, obviously, I've had conversations with people. That's the strategy. However, his comms is shit. This is why it's like, oh my God, he's got an impulse control problem. That said, this is where I think it comes back to that trust. Now, why I might trust Elon Musk a little more than I would trust, say, Zuckerberg, for example, or Twitter 1.0 versus Twitter 2.0, which was with Twitter. It was the lack of transparency. It was the fact that I couldn't actually contact anybody. I couldn't correct it. Now, again, that's where the if you look at my previous stream, that I understand somewhat why that might be a thing now, because obviously in EU law, the mere knowing about a piece of content makes them liable for the content. Okay, and the second that they actually receive, when they receive notification of that content, or they know about that content, or they've got a record of having engaged with that complaint, obviously they're on the hook legally for it. So I can understand how when you look at it from different perspectives, from a strategy point of view, we can't possibly look at all of this without lawsuits. We can't possibly look at all of this without shutting down. So what they will do is put all of these things, they'll create these special things where, cranks like me who are lodging tickets but are flagged, or they're a nuisance or something like that, where it exposes them. Again, all done by AI, not a person. They're just designing these systems. You can see how I can reverse engineer through the Twitter files how they've kind of sneakily gone, all right, well, let's just have this automated so we can say that it's automated, so we can say we didn't know about it. Okay, and there's no real, it's gone, it's disappeared. That's probably, it's like, oh yeah, we didn't know about it, plausible deniability. But on the other hand, they have to have a process for escalation, and getting it escalated is just, you couldn't get it escalated for this reason. And this is why I'm wondering whether, that might have been a factor in it. You see how there's lots of different reasons for this. But this is where we need to be a little more, this is where I'm saying why. Look, despite a lot of evidence to the contrary, and, I've said this before, I'll defend Elon Musk and then I'll be on my phone and then I'll make a face and Paul will go, has he done it again? This is just the cycle of being, a human being who understands the issue, who is reasonable and professional spotter of fuckwits and fuckwittery, which is that he's trying to do an experiment with Twitter that is unprecedented, but it's going to be mistakes. He's going to fuck it up, and what he's trying to do is and failing sometimes because he's trying to transform what is effectively something the size of a small bank, okay, a tech corporation that is 15 years old, okay, in public, live, using lean UX, trying stuff, reversing stuff, trying it, because I think he believes that restoring, again, this is the charitable take, could be wrong. It's not just, and this is why I do try to give people a chance, and even when they fuck up. And again, this is where trust you can make you stupid. It can make you naive. A decision to trust someone can make you naive. But that's where, like, I learned this with my marriage. I learned this with other things, which is that you cannot, if you lose your capacity to trust anything, you end up really unhappy. I like the fact that there's a bit of hope in trusting people, in, being charitable. I am a happy person. I'm a fairly content person because every day I know that I try my best, and every day I choose to show up and choose to trust, and I choose to give people the benefit of the doubt. I fuck up big time, a lot, okay? I'm a human being, a knee-jerk, I'm an asshole, I fucking whatever, okay? I get it wrong. And also we live in a system where I have to be more hyperbolic or, extreme than I would ordinarily like, just by me, that's marketing, that's just the system we live in. I've accepted that you can't do it differently necessarily. I wish you could, but you can't. You got to be a bit more outrageous and, simplistic and, all those and pick fights, and all that sort of stuff. It's unfortunate, but, I try to do as little of that as I possibly can, but, people got to live, So people make all those different calculations for themselves, and, I've got a sort of, lower pain threshold for sort of, ethics and that sort of stuff. I can't do unethical things, Some people can bargain that away a bit more, but I'm not good at it. But it's just, like with this, trying to see it from this point of view, which is that a lot of studies show that, transparency with institutions is the biggest barrier to trust, okay? Being user-centric is the barrier to trust. Now, your definition of user-centric is where, this might be a problem with Twitter, for example, because obviously there is a different school of thought around what qualifies as user-centric. Some might believe that user safety, in terms of emotional safety and sort of coddling people on social media and protecting them from everything is what's best for them. That's a school of thought, okay? I have a different school of thought, which is, one that aligns a little more with Elon Musk. It's not about free speech per se. It's about, again, it becomes about being radically pragmatic. Like, I try to be pragmatic, which is, it's not sustainable. Like, you can't keep everyone safe. You need to, balance that with everyone's needs. Also, free speech is not the center of everything, but it is part of it. People's right to have, an opinion, even a wrong one, even a stupid one. They're allowed to be stupid. It's not, they're not, it's the job of those who have political power or, to have a process that protects from stupidity and aggressive activists. We've had that for years. It's called facilitating. It's called being it's called office bearer in a political party going, you're an idiot. Stop it. Shut up. Let that person talk. That's called mediation and responsibility and training and leadership. That's called leadership, okay? Not just silencing everybody because you're a bad leader, okay? And that's one of the other things, which is that, obviously it's politically expedient to silence people, but it's not going to work. Just loses their trust. It's bad leadership. We need better leaders. We need better politicians who can filter noise and signal from noise and understand what people's pain actually is, win back trust, be honest. And I think that was one of the strengths for our Premier, Mark McGowan, who he did have public trust because even though there were times when he was wrong, and obviously there's going to be that portion of people who fucking are just gone, okay? And they're like in conspiracy town, they're already in QAnon, all that shit. But most people, he won in a landslide, unprecedented landslide, okay? With the and it was actually it was actually more historically significant because it was a second term, and most people with especially here, you generally get you win the vote. You win the election for the first term, and then the second election is substantially less, but you hang on by a margin, and then you're replaced with the people. Basically, there's this idea with Australia. It's like, well, it's time for someone else to have a go. It's not a way. We have the same problems. We have the same problems with the electorate. It's not unique to America. We just got a system that's more stable and robust and allows for people to be fuckwits without it sort of affecting affecting the sort of fabric of fucking society, the fabric of reality, right? We've got our crazies too, but the system sort of somewhat protects from it. We don't tend, they're outliers. We've got but they're still there and they're still engaged and they're still actually, even when we elect crazies like Pauline Hanson or, people like that, they still do end up ultimately participating in the process in a productive manner sometimes. Okay, they're actually generally, so it's, we don't have the same endemic sort of problems that they do in America. But when I'm talking about trust, this is what I'm talking about, is that trust is hard. Like you've got to, I trust Musk because it's not about political bias. I don't share his politics, for example. But I do share his approach in terms of, like I said, that he's doing an experiment of sorts, which is trying transparency as best he can in a way that is interesting and weird, and it's going to fail. Okay, I do transparency, and that's why I think people mostly trust me. Okay, and also the fact that I can't be bought with. I disclose any interest or conflict to a point. Obviously, I've got non-disclosures and all of those things that I have to abide by as well. I'm just, that's life. But it's, for the most part, I'm trustworthy, and I value the fact that and I value that. Okay, but obviously, the mindset of sort of an authoritarian is that trust is something that you can demand or expect when you lie to people and you gaslight people, and you're seeing this with the media. It's like, the public trust, like 33%, I think was the last thing. It's like, have any trust in media at all on anything. It's like the vast majority of people do not trust the media on anything. And that's mostly because, on everyone at this point has one issue. I have several, but one issue where they've seen a lie, and seen everyone sort of fall into lockstep. I've seen it several times, obviously, because I've followed that specific pattern of propaganda. But it's but I think everyone has reached a point where the overreach is so heavy-handed. And I think I said this a couple of years ago. Just let it go. These things travel in a certain direction. Authoritarians, that's going to authoritarianate. Like, it's just going to happen. That's how people are. Which is that eventually, under this, when you lie, you got to make a bigger lie to cover the lie. That's why I don't lie, because I can't. It becomes harder and harder to cover the lie, and they need to do more and more to try and cover up their tracks. Like that's that's going to happen, and that's happening with the media, where these leaks are all coming out. Where they've overtly lied or lied by omission, or like tried to censor dissent, or all these various things. And that's why, I do sort of cut Musk a bit of slack in that regard, mostly because he is at least trying to be honest as best he can. And it's like, and there's lots of complaints you can have, but it's like, I do have an inclination to trust people who are honest, and that's why people like comedians. Like I said, it's why people trust comedians more. But that's also what you're seeing is people who they still trust in mostly, I think we're seeing who benefits more. Like I said, that TYT, they run a lot of this stuff that's like, it's all astroturfed. It's all, they run an ad network. They run networks of YouTubers, and that's the stuff you know about. You don't know about all of the sort of dark shit. They all do it. Okay? They're going to be, it's just, it's the industry. The industry does it. And it's just really fascinating that no one will fess up to it. And it's just really, I find it really interesting, because I'm sitting here going, yeah, you're probably doing that. And I could show you how much of your audience is a bot or troll farm or fake engagement, or you're using an engagement pod, or you've hired someone to do your dirty work for you. Like, it's obvious. I can see it. I'm in the industry. And they go, do you have proof? Well, no, I can't prove it, but I have 30 years in tech, and I know that it's done, and you're not actually exactly, you're ignoring me on this. So it's anyway, where there's smoke, there's fire usually with this stuff. Anyway, I'm fading. I've got to go. I've got a meeting. So I've got to go. I do. The thing is, there are things that I trust. What I do, how I trust is that I look at who seems like they're telling the truth. Okay. And again, that's hard to tell. Okay. But, but when someone lies and they show that they're willing to lie, especially if they're willing to lie for money or they're willing to lie for clout, once you see, okay, so I don't judge people for being wrong. Being wrong, we're all wrong. This was interesting with Sam Cedar, where I pointed out a thing where they were wrong. This Kiwi Farms thing, they were wrong. I don't blame them for being wrong at the time because it was a call-in who said that this was happening. He took it on face value, blah, blah, blah. I trust you if, when you are wrong, you correct it. And that's a pillar of journalism, which is when you are wrong or when you fuck up, you admit you fucked up. Okay. And that's why I tend to trust, whatever. Okay. But trust, I think that is actually, trust, the best way to trust someone is what happens when you disagree with them. If they get mad and abuse you or, treat you a certain way for saying something that is contrary to them and their position, and, they go on the attack or they attack you, you lose my trust. Okay. If they don't disclose who's paying them, like I'll always tell you if I get money or whatever from wherever, not that I do, but I will. I would disclose any conflict of interest. I would tell you, within reason, obviously, because, you don't want to expose yourself to legal shit. But trust is something that you can't demand of people. And I think, and this is the thing in tech particularly, is that I think that tech founders in particular and the tech industry in particular don't understand that loss of trust is quite severe. Because I think people, I've always been willing to forgive a fuck up. Okay, Cambridge Analytica was a pretty big fuck up. Okay, but there's only so many times where it starts to look like, it's when you find out that it's sort of deliberate or that they made decisions. They made a decision where they were supposed to be on the side of the users, and they went with, profit or clout, where those people who, when they have to choose between their audience and who's paying them, they err on the side of who's paying them. Okay. Like if I was part of an MCN, I'm not saying I would be, but, let's say that, Fairyland Universe, I was invited to some sort of, like TYT's MCN. It wouldn't change what I say. That's why they wouldn't invite me. But, I would still call them out on the same shit because it's just, that's that stuff's not conditional. But that's because I know what trust, I know how few people actually operate in a way that makes them fully trustworthy, and especially in sort of this influencer marketing and all that sort of stuff. I'm getting tired and I'm fading and I'm hungry and I've got a meeting and I've got to go. I didn't make any sense. I sort of waffled, but anyway. Time to go. I love you. I'll try to be back as soon as I can. What's it's Thursday today. Yeah, I've got so much on, but I'm doing my best. But yeah, support me if you can, share me if you can. I don't know if you get any value out of it, but it's good. I show up to flex muscles, but I am on a show called Due Dissidence tomorrow. I'll obviously retweet that and all that sort of shit. But I am working on the newsletter part of my site, and that's the missing link, obviously, and the members area and those sorts of things, and my courses and things that actually, I'm trying a new model, which is basically where it's obviously open to patrons, but I'm also going to make it, there's an option that people can, if they value the content, they can unlock it for everyone, all right? Because I don't like paywalls, but I need to live. So it's like, well, okay, well, let's have an option where someone can actually donate a big chunk of money and sponsor it to be freely available. right? So that's one thing we can maybe look at until such, that I can actually justify doing Patreon full time, which I just can't. It's not possible. But I really try to make as much free as I can, but it's just, chicken and the egg problem, really, unless you're taking that fat pack money and that, those sorts of things, it's just one of those things. Anyway, I gotta go. I love you. Take care. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.